Okay, so bear with me here, but imagine you're getting a tailored suit. And the tailor, they measure the top half of your body perfectly. They measure your arms, measure your neck, measure your chest. The top half of that suit is going to fit you perfectly. But it gets to the trousers and they say, you know, there was a bloke in here earlier, he was a foot shorter than you, but we'll just use the measurements for his trousers, for your trousers, and that should fit you fine, yeah? If that happened to you, you'd probably be pretty annoyed. Now, that is essentially exactly what's happening when manufacturers offer the same length chainstays across all sizes of bike. One half of that bike has been designed specifically to fit you, the other, not so much. Chainstay length. It's a hot topic in the mountain bike world at the minute, and while I'm not a full Brian Cale saying that long chainstays are the answer to all of the world's problems, I do think it's something that more riders should be paying attention to, especially if they're either taller or shorter than average. In this video, I'm going to be arguing in favour of proportional chainstays and giving some reasons why longer chainstays probably aren't a terrible idea. I might swap between the terms chainstay and rear centre throughout this video, but they both mean the same thing. It's the distance from the centre of the bottom bracket to the centre of the rear wheel. So this video was partly inspired by a recent Pink Bike article written by Seb Stott. In it, he actually gives some really solid arguments as to why shorter chainstays might be good in quite a few applications, but he also completely forgets to mention proportional chainstays and why they might be quite important to actually quite a large number of riders. So in this video, I'm going to be addressing that. Also, there is some inherent hypocrisy to this video because I dare say in the future I will ride bikes that don't have proportional chainstays across all sizes. This is just something I think the industry should be doing better. So, with all that said, why does this matter in a real world application? Say you read a review of a bike you really want to buy, and the reviewer, they absolutely love it. They say it climbs like a mountain goat, corners like it's on rails, and all the other review cliches that we're all used to. The only issue is the reviewer is riding a different size bike to the one that you are looking to buy. If that bike has proportional chainstays and the designers have done a good job, the ratio between the front centre and the rear centre of a bike should be relatively consistent across sizes. Therefore, even though you're going to be riding a different size bike to them, in theory, it should have quite similar ride characteristics. But if that chainstay length is the same across all sizes, the bike is going to have really quite different ride characteristics depending on what size offered, as the ratio between the front centre and the rear centre of a bike is going to change quite dramatically depending on the size. So while it may feel really balanced for the reviewer in their size medium, for you riding an XL, that rear end is probably going to be way too short. Or alternatively, if you're riding an extra small, that rear end is probably going to be way too long, and it's not going to work as well as it does for you as it did for the reviewer. Mountain biking is all about moving your body around to control the bike. That's why a few years ago, front centre length started to grow exponentially. The theory being, if you have a longer front centre, you have more space to move your body around, and therefore, in theory, more control over the bike. But the front half of your bike is literally only half of your bike. You can't have sizes which have over 100 millimeters different in reach, which have the exact same length chainstays, and expect them to work just as well for riders of massively varying heights and weights. A taller rider, in theory, is going to have a greater mass. Also being taller, their movement over the bike will have a greater levering effect. So their body movements are likely going to have a greater effect over the control of the bike, meaning they're probably going to need a longer reach, but they're also going to need a longer chainstay to keep that feeling balanced. Now, in fairness, if you have the exact same length chainstays across all sizes of bikes, that will preserve the suspension kinematics of the bike regardless of what size you're on. And that's great if all you care about is having the exact same suspension dynamics as somebody on a different size bike to you. However, I feel like this is an argument often used by manufacturers when they don't want to offer different length chainstays because it's going to cost them more money. They will say it's more important that we retain the suspension kinematics rather than offering a chainstay that might fit the rider better. So, what brands are doing a good job of this at the moment? This isn't an exhaustive list. I've not trawled through every single manufacturer and every single frame that they make. These are just some brands that I've picked out that I think offer an interesting proposition for the consumer, and I just want to talk about them a bit. So my two most recent mountain bikes have both been Norcos, and Norco have actually been way ahead of the curve in terms of offering proportional chainstays for different sizes of bike. I first became aware of this way back in 2018. I was riding in a woods in Norfolk, and a man came up to me who was riding a Norco We started talking about our bikes, and he explained to me that Norco were great because they were offering proportional length chainstays across all their bikes. And at the time, I remember thinking, why would that matter? Honestly, I was like, why would I care about that? I was quite a young rider at that point, and I didn't really know anything about geometry. I just thought, why is this man talking to me about chainstay length? But I guess we've come full circle now, because I'm talking to you about chainstay length. So maybe you had a point. Other brands that are doing really well for this at the moment are Raw and Privateer. Both their enduro and trail bikes have proportional length chainstays, and they look really, really good. Transition and Santa Cruz, they also offer some proportionality in their chainstay lengths. Santa Cruz especially, I think, are doing really well for it at the moment, and generally, again, have bikes that look great regardless of what size you're considering. Cannondale offer proportional length chainstays across the majority of their lineup, along with Commensal, who historically never really bothered with proportional length chainstays, but now they've recently changed that in their new lineup. Atherton bikes have a degree of proportionality in their chainstays, but considering they have basically a million different reach configurations, and I think only 3 length chainstays across the sizes they offer, they probably could be doing more, especially considering like all of their frames are custom made. It couldn't be that difficult to 3D print a longer chainstay, or maybe it is. I don't know. I know nothing about manufacturing bikes. I'm literally just a man talking to you on YouTube, so don't assume I actually know everything about bikes and manufacturing them, because I really don't. Another UK brand offering some proportionality is Airdrop. Their latest Edit MX looks really, really good, and I would love to try out that bike. Now, here are some brands who aren't doing quite as well. The new Canyon Sender looks absolutely incredible. And there's a great bit in a Brian Cahill video where he's speaking to Fabian Burrell about chainstay length and why it's so important that the front center and rear center of the bike are balanced. Fabian goes into great detail. I think he uses some motorsport analogies and why it's important, and it's it's all making sense. You're like, yeah, perfect. I agree with you, Fabian. And then at the end of that clip, he says, that's why we've offered the same length chainstay across all sizes. And it just doesn't quite add up in my head. That's a man who clearly understands why that ratio might be important, but on the production bikes, it hasn't happened for whatever reason. And yeah, that's quite disappointing to see, because Canyon are a massive manufacturer and they could definitely offer some proportionality across their lineup. I'm not saying the downhill bike, which they sell in tiny numbers, is definitely going to have proportional length chainstays. I understand why that wouldn't happen, but in their other mountain bike lineup, a bit of proportionality would probably go a long way. This next one hurts me a bit, but Orange Bikes, they're a UK brand that I absolutely love. Some people think their bikes look weird. I think they look really cool. But unfortunately, they offer basically no proportionality across all of their bikes, and that's pretty disappointing to see, especially considering all of their bikes are handmade. So I don't think it would be too difficult to change the production line to make different length chainstays. But again, I know nothing about manufacturing bikes, so it could actually be incredibly difficult. Pivot and their new Phoenix downhill bike. It's got 2 chains, and for me, that's cool. I would love to ride a bike with 2 chains, but unfortunately, again, there's no proportionality in those chainstays. It's the same length across all sizes. And to be fair, given how complicated that 2-chain suspension linking system is, I can see why they might have had to keep that chainstay length the same, but they could have maybe just made it a little bit longer so it suited larger riders a bit better. Marin and their new Alpine Trail. It's had incredible reviews, loads of people saying how good of a bike it is to ride, but again, they offer no proportionality in those chainstays, which is quite disappointing because Marin, they're not exactly a small manufacturer, and I do feel like it's probably something they could offer. Now, I'm not having a go at boutique small brands who don't offer proportionality in their chainstays. I understand why, if you're only making 20 bikes a year, it might be prohibitively expensive to offer different length chainstays. I understand the economies of scale and why, if you're a small manufacturer, there are certain limitations to the frame sizes and configurations that you can offer. If you're one of those manufacturers, I have absolutely nothing against you, and I probably think your bikes are really cool. This video is more aimed at bigger manufacturers who could, and they really should be doing a little bit more to offer chainstay lengths that caters to people on the extreme ends of the height spectrum. Also, this is a problem that doesn't even really affect me. I am 5'11" and weigh sort of 82, 83 kilograms. So most mountain bikes are pretty much designed with somebody of my height and my weight in mind. I am pretty much 1 pint of mountain biker. Completely average in that regard. I could ride any size medium, size large frame, and I'd probably be pretty much fine. This, again, is aimed at people who are going to find it harder to find a mountain bike that truly fits them because their height isn't catered for by the majority of mountain bike manufacturers. Now I've been banging on about proportional chainstays for long enough. Here are some reasons why long chainstays probably aren't a bad idea. One of the main arguments in favour of longer length chainstays is increased front end grip. Now, I don't know about you, but if I could choose one end of my bike to have grip, it's pretty much always going to be the front end. There's very few situations where I don't want the front end to have grip while riding a mountain bike. Front end grip is good. We like front end grip, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum when it comes to chainstay length. A lot of the reasons for longer length chainstays on modern mountain bikes is to compensate for having a higher stack height and slacker head angle. If you have a higher stack height, you are reducing some of the pressure that will be on the front wheel. You can counteract that by increasing the length of the chainstay, meaning you have the benefits and confidence inspiring effects of a higher stack height, so you can be, more confident and square on the bike in rough stuff, while still having a good amount of front end pressure and having grip on the front end. So you can have a high stack height, still have loads of grip on the front wheel, and you've got a nice long chainstay, which is making all of that happen, which is, in my mind, a good thing. If you have a longer chainstay, you're also probably going to have a longer wheelbase, which in turn is going to offer you greater stability at speed. Now, one of the things that is often said against longer chainstays is that they don't corner so well in tight stuff. And I'm not going to argue that a bike that is way longer is going to corner as well in really tight hairpin corners as one that is really short. That just isn't going to happen. But the majority of modern mountain bike tracks don't have many 90-degree hairpin Euro-style corners. Most of them are pretty flowing and quite high speed. And I feel like for the majority of modern mountain bike trails that most of us ride, having a bit more stability at speed is definitely going to be a good thing. This reason's a little bit harder to quantify, but please do bear with me. Having a longer chainstay means you can be more centered on the bike. And I'll use this example to describe why that might be a good thing. Say you're in the middle of a berm and unfortunately your front wheel strikes a fairly medium-sized rock. If you're way over the front of the bike to get grip on the front wheel and you hit that rock, that could end pretty badly. But if you're able to stay more centered on the bike and still have grip on that front wheel, hitting that rock is likely going to have much more minor consequences. So that is just one example of why being centered on the bike is a good thing. Often sports cars and bikes, they talk about a 50-50 weight distribution and that being a good thing. Now, I don't know enough about science or physics to fully describe why that is a good thing, but in my mind, staying centered and allowing the front suspension of your bike and rear suspension of your bike to work equally well definitely sounds like a good thing. I think I've waffled on enough there, so this is going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching if you've got this far. If you have any feelings at all about chainstay length or proportional chainstays, leave a comment down below. I'd love to discuss this further. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.